everyone, and welcome back. Today we're talking all about our fabulous MCC, which is our sparkling wine in South Africa. And I've got two very special guests joining me this evening, and it is Denzel from Simonsuk Wines and John from Silverthorn Wines. Hey guys.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thanks so much for joining. And Denzel, we know that you've been obviously we've all been in lockdown, but Denzel, you work quite extensively on the farm. What have you been doing now that we're in lockdown?
Well, I haven't been that active. The guys at the farm obviously need to make sure that they get everything done, wines in barrel. We've started bottling this week because we need to get some orders out now that we're allowed to. So activity on the property is going on, and they're very actively busy at the moment. Of course, I tend to spend more time in the trade at the moment, so I need to look at all the strategies, find out and try and get our heads around what's going to happen when we eventually allowed to open up. So
I'm really looking forward to that day, hey?
I think everybody,
Definitely.
I can't wait.
And you, John? I like that picture in the background that you've got there.
Yeah, that's the thorn in the background. No, listen, I mean, we finished harvest very early because we cut classic. So we were very lucky. All the cellar work was done. So we've been spending time out in vineyards, sowing cover crops, preparing the land, getting compost ready. So focusing a lot on farm work as opposed to, because there's not really much one can do in terms of sales. So the odd post on Instagram and that kind of thing, but very much farm work.
Okay, and for those of you that are watching, I wonder if you have MCC at home. If you do, if you don't, just comment in the comments. We're here to answer your questions. We're talking all about South African MCC, and we'd love to know what you have at home and what you don't have and what you're craving. We'd love to just interact with you guys. So if you have any questions or comments, please do post them in the comments below. We'll be happy to answer them. And I'm going to kick off with my question, which is for you, Denzel. And we know that Simonsuk is actually the producer that started MCC in South Africa. And tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about the history of Simonsuk.
Yeah, so just to start off, Simonsuk is a family-owned vineyard, owned by the Milan family. And the two brothers, Johan and Francois, are still actively involved in the business. But I think what is quite important and very profound is that the farm started in 1963 to kind of get going with winemaking. But in 1971 was the year that Franz, who's a legend in the wine industry, decided to do a particular style as close to the French champagne method. And when we did it in 1971, for those that didn't know, it was actually a Blanc de Blanc that was released. It was the workhorse of the South African wine industry, which was a Chenin Blanc, because we didn't have Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier available. And we decided that we wanted to give the wine a very particular name that would be a true testament to South Africa and to Cape Town, hence the name Kaapse Vonkel, Cape Sparkles. And so we haven't tried to change the name at all. We know we get a lot of feedback that the name is too Afrikaans. But Kaapse Vonkel was about making a statement saying that this is our style, it's South Africa, and it's made in Cape Town. And today the wine carries all three cultivars, which is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And the Milan third generation children are now busy starting to work on the farm, and slowly but surely is taking over from their parents in terms of both winemaking and the other business activities on the property. An interesting fact that the Kaapse Vonkel was the most expensive wine on the South African market in 1971. It was R3 a bottle, which made it the most expensive wine on the South African market, for those that didn't know. And in those days, you could only buy cases, and cases used to be 12. So for a case of Kaapsefonkel in 1971, you paid 36 Rand a case. Can't we go back to the old days?
My gosh, I'm actually shocked right now, Denzel. Oh my word. So in 1971, a bottle of MCC, Kaapsefonkel from Simmerse, only cost 3 Rand a bottle. Which means a case was 36.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Imagine going back to those times. Wow. We would be swimming in MCC. What an interesting history. Wow. Can you believe it? Thank you for explaining all of that, Denzel.
Pleasure.
And what are you drinking this evening? I see you've got 2 bottles there. Is the Kaapsefonkel there, one of them?
Yes, I'm having the Kaapsefonkel Brut Rosé. I thought that the color goes with my jacket that I'm having on. So it is it's the style that we do with Pinot Noir, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And I always say, when I explain this, I say the triple P, and it has the true claim to South Africa having the Pinot Noirs present. And in the other bottle, I just have the original Kaapsefonkel, which is the Chardonnay Pinot Noir. But this bottle I've opened on your SA Lockdown MCC day, and I had 2 glasses of it, and I kept it again because I wanted to prove that if you cap it immediately, you should be able to retain the bubbles and the pressure in the bottle. So at some stage, I should open it and see if everything is so good.
Yeah, that's very special. And, if you've got the right cap to reseal it, then you can keep MCC for a little bit longer,
Definitely.
Cool. And then maybe we can go on to the next question. I'm getting some nice comments here from everyone that's joining in. So thank you very much. If you're watching, you have any questions, please do mention them in the comments below and we'll be happy to answer them for you. So we talked a little bit about the history and, Simmerse, 1971, only 3 Rand a bottle, 36 Rand a case. How amazing. And that Kaapsefonkel stands for Cape Sparkle. And I absolutely love that tradition. And Denzel's enjoying a beautiful glass all there to himself in lockdown, and we're jealous. But we've also got John here. And John is from Silverthorne, which is more of a modern MCC producer. So John, tell us a little bit about, how Silverthorne was started.
Okay, it's an interesting history. So this little farm, we are based out in Robertson on the Breda River, and my wife's father bought it in 1976, and he passed away in 1999, and my wife and myself took over the farm. But because I knew we were coming to the farm, I went to Elsenburg and studied winemaking, and I think I was very lucky. It was almost providence that the wine I got as a student to make was Method Cup Classic. I didn't realize then how important it would be, but so it was an interesting.
It was fate.
It was fate. It was fate. So I didn't make it from Chardonnay or Pinot Noir. I actually made it from Pinot Gris, which is it's a mutation of Pinot Noir. So it was very interesting, and we made a Cup Classic in Elsenburg, and that was 1995. But Silverthorne itself, we took over, and in 2004 we decided to specialize and launch our label Silverthorne and do a specific Cup Classic. I was very privileged through my winemaking career that I spent 2 years at Graham Beck. And I worked with Peter Ferreira, and I must say, I think Peter is, they call him Mr. Bubbles. He's been very influential in Cup Classic. And he most certainly sort of prickled my imagination and really caught me onto Cup Classic. So that's where we really started. So 2004, we released our first little, was actually what I'm drinking now, which is called The Green Man. And we released our first, was 500 cases in, the first vintage was 2004. We released in 2006. So that's how Silverthorne started. And we specialize only in Cup Classic, so we do nothing else. We do 3 to 4 different styles of Cup Classic. So we're small, so we fall into the sort of the tier of specialized bubbly producers like Colmont, Lelud, Charles Fox, Silverthorne. It's that kind of tier where, it's sort of 35, 40,000 bottles, only Cup Classic, very dedicated, very specialized.
That sounds great. And you said it's called the Green Man. Why is it called the Green Man?
Also a long story. So Silverthorne is actually named after the acacia karoo. So the picture behind me, where's that there? Those white thorns, instead of calling it white thorn, we wanted a connection to Africa, so we called it Silverthorne. But when we launched our first wine, it's a Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. And when we first designed the label, it was Silverthorne, Blanc de Blanc. And I just thought Blanc de Blanc is just way too boring. You've got to come up with something more interesting. So I did some research. And because Silverthorne's named after the acacia karoo, which is after a tree, I went and looked at forests. And the Green Man is the spirit of the forest. So he's an ancient pagan deity, dates back to Old England, Old Europe, and it's that leaf human face. So it's the Green Man, pure green grapes, Blanc de Blanc, and it just worked very well. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun.
Sounds good. And we've got 2 amazing MCCs here staring in front of me, and it sounds absolutely amazing. I'd love to taste it. Sucks that we're in lockdown, and if you're watching, I'm sure you are super jealous too. I managed to find a bottle of MCC in my stockpile, and it is actually a Neil Joubert, Christine Marie. It's a 2014 vintage, and that's what I really like about MCC is that it can be from years and years ago, and it's so special when you pop that cork, just to know that it's been resting in that bottle for so long, and it feels absolutely amazing. So cheers to you, fine gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us, and to you that are watching, thank you very much.
Cheers.
There we go. Cheers. Lots of bubbles. I have a question here from Gabby. John, what is your favorite MCC and why?
Interesting question. So this is not excluding Silverthorne.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say Silverthorne. Because obviously that is your best.
I think I've got sort of various go-to bubblies. I like Charles Fox. I like Lelud. I like Colmont. I think in particular Colmont and Lelud, the styles of those Cup Classics are very elegant. They're very gently pressed. They're very dry, very refined. That just gives sort of a few broad strokes. I think some classics are Grainbeck, Blanc de Blanc, brilliant. It's always a go-to, and they obviously their prestige cuvee, their cuvee Clive is also great. A couple of other interesting bubblies. I drink a lot of Cup Classic.
I love your choices because they're boutique and they're also premium, and I've also tasted, Lelud and Charles Fox, and I'm dying to taste Silverthorne, I haven't tried it yet, so I would like to soon.
Well, as soon as lockdown is finished, you're going to have to come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we've just lost Denzel, but I'm sure he'll rejoin soon. Probably just a bad connection. And for those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, we have John here from Silverthorne MCC, Silverthorne Wines, and I'm here to answer any questions too. So you can ask me any questions. And John, maybe I can ask you a question on storing MCC. How do you know when is the best time to open it, and how do you store MCC?
I think it's such an important question because lots of people think bubbly, be it champagne, Cup Classic, Cava, Prosecco, whatever it is that you take it and drink it early and drink it young and that's it. But it's actually far from the truth. Pure champagne, the Grand Marques, the really great cuvée that come from sort of the Grand Marque houses, can last incredibly well. So the best tasting I've ever been to, or one of the best tastings, was a tasting of 12 Grand Marques, and they were all 21 years old. So this is from Krug to Bollinger to Tattinger to, it's all sort of all the top champagne houses. And what was amazing from that tasting was that of the 12 wines, we all agreed that 8 of them were still too young. So that puts it into perspective. So very well-made prestige cuvées, the good blends, especially Blanc de Blanc, can definitely be put down very easily and will last, I would say, confidently between 5 and 10 years, without a doubt. So you can definitely age bubbly. And the longer you keep it, there are 2 things. There's time on the lease. That's very important. So generally, 24 months, 36 months on the lease, that gives you small bubbles and all the elegance of Cab Classique or champagne. But what is also important is time on the cork. So the longer you can keep it on the cork, the wines just become complex, richer, more nutty. And instead of them just being fresh and bubbly, they become really interesting wines. So be patient, store your bubbly, keep buying it and storing it and building up your stocks, and you'll never be disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I always go by the rule of thumb, just buy, a case or 2. Don't just buy 1 or 2 bottles, because inevitably you will drink it immediately and then it's all gone. Save some for storage and enjoy it later. You'll be surprised at what you can find. That Denzel's back.
Exactly.
Where did you go?
It's failing us.
Yeah, that always happens at the best of times, hey? Denzel, we were just talking about how to store MCC, and probably one of the best parts is obviously opening the MCC, and we're talking a little bit about sabrage, aren't we? You've got a very special technique on how to do a proper sabrage. So will you give us some tips?
Yeah, so what is quite important when you sabrage is that you need to make sure that your bottle is cold. That's one. Your bottle is warm, it's going to burst in your hands. Now, one of the things that I do at the farm is I try to create a runway sort of for the saber. So I always try to remove, I'm not sure if everybody can see, just try to remove the foil, which is on the neck label. And if you have a feel at this neck lining, there's 2 seams or joints that comes together. And the one thing that I feel for is the rougher seam. Because one of the things that I've seen at the farm is when you do sabrage on the line of the rougher seam, you tend to have a much easier cut to the bottle. And so when you do that, is the one you want to feel for the lining. The second part, which is of course important, is that you don't want to remove the wire cage completely off the bottle. So the wire cage that's on the bottle, you only want to slide the wire 1 knot up so that the wire sits within this lip of the bottle. And that way the wire cage still holds the cork. So if your cork do want to push up, the wire cage will still hold it back. Because that's the only way you can sabrage, because sabrage is all about the pressure inside the bottle. Now remember, this Cab Classique has 6 bars of pressure in it. That's 3 times your car tire. So it is quite dangerous. So keep the bottle as low as possible, because if you're going to sabrage and it bursts, then it will most probably burst up until that part of the bottle and you won't cut yourself. Okay? So as low as possible, and just have a lovely, nice, clean slide into the bottle. Remember, you don't need to force it. It's just a lovely, elegant slide, and the pressure in the bottle will cut the top off and it will spill away. Now, it is completely safe to drink from it because the 6 bars of pressure push all the splints away from the neck from dropping back, and it makes it absolutely fine to drink. You can do it with a kitchen knife. If you're going to do it at home, do not use the sharp part of the blade. Use the back part of the kitchen knife. Or, I see John is picking up his glass. Or you can do the stem of the glass and heat it up, and it should pop off. Okay. Well, that should be a quick. If you don't get it right the first time, don't worry. It happens to the best of us.
You need lots of glasses, then you can get it right.
Yeah.
Oh, because I'm sure it can go horribly wrong. I mean, I've seen some sabrages where it does exactly what you said, Denzel, that it actually breaks here at the base. So that tip that you gave to hold it as low as possible is very important, because you really don't want to be cutting your hand, because of all that pressure, the glass can just shatter all over you and it will cut your hand. And I also like the tip about don't using the sharp knife on the edge, because that will also cause some damage and it could crack in a different way. So we don't want that. And if you really want some training, I would suggest that you guys go and visit Summersoch. They've got a nice way of showing you how to sabrage, and you can try it firsthand. So I thought that was very cool. I've tried it myself. It's very fun. And yeah, it would be lovely. I don't know if you also do it, John?
No, we every now and then to celebrate.
Yeah. It's a very special way of how to open and to enjoy MCC. So thank you very much for that. That's very cool. And to those of you that are watching, if you've got any questions about sabrage, how to drink champagne or MCC, then please do comment and we can answer them in the questions. Okay, so let's talk about taste, John. Without looking at the bottle, let's pretend it's a blind tasting. You don't know what someone has poured you, but you do know it's a bubbly. And a lot of the time we get to experience this, you know, either at a wedding or some birthday parties. You just get handed a glass of bubbly and you're not sure what it is. It could be an MCC, it could be a sparkling wine, which is made a little bit differently. How do you know the difference? How can you pick up the difference between the two? Maybe you can give us some tips.
Okay. Look, I think the most important thing is the bubble. So generally speaking, Cutler Sec or champagne style wines, which are bottle fermented, have small bubbles. Whereas sparkling wine, which has been sparged, you know, that's typical old Fifth Avenue cold duck or those kinds of cheap and cheerful bubblies, they've been sparged and their bubble is more like an Eno's bubble. So it's a big, rough bubble. That's the first sort of thing you've got to look at. The nose, on generally speaking, Cutler Sec, you'll pick up biscuity characters, more complexity, more finesse. Whereas just normal sparkling sparged wine will generally just have a fruity character. Will be nothing, there won't be anything complex about it, or no sort of finesse or elegance. So I think those are the important things, is the nose has an evolution of biscuity notes. The bubble is fine and elegant. Yeah, that's kind of your go-to. And you'll see that just normal sparkling wines are light in color, big bubble, nothing, not very interesting.
Yeah, I must say, the more you try the two, the more you get to pick up those type of characteristics. And I like how you say elegance, you know. For me, MCC is a lot more elegance, very fine mousse, small bubbles, and definitely those biscuity notes on the nose. And you can taste it, you know, when you drink the MCC, you can actually feel a lot more of the flavor in your mouth. Whereas with a sparkling wine, you can see it immediately in the glass because the bubbles are quite active and quite big. And a lot of the time, exactly like you said, you know, it's a bit more fruity and it hits you in the face like, wow, okay, this is not MCC. So it is quite easy, I guess, to pick up the two differences. So thank you very much for explaining. Denzel, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, John, can you just lift up your glass for me? You can see what glass John is tasting out of, and I've actually poured this earlier just to also showcase, because quite a few or most people would prefer having MCC out of a flute. Now, a flute is really nice for presentation. It looks good, but it doesn't allow you to, and especially with MCC, if you really want that expression of the biscuit, it's the complexity. The bigger the glass and the more open the top, the better you're able to get the aroma on it. So the next time, if you're just going to taste, by all means, go for a white wine glass, which is a better glass to taste out of. But if you're going to enjoy it with friends and you really just want it to look very elegant, by all means, go with your normal traditional flute.
Yeah, I love that, because sometimes, a lot of the wine traditions have been bred from, elegance and, being a little bit pompous. And I guess that's where it comes from. But I like your tip that you could actually just use a normal white wine glass. And I agree with you, you do smell a lot more of the aromas. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the whole move has gone to that kind of shape of glass where you've got a wide area for a lot of surface area. Just gives off the nose. Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, and look at all those bubbles sitting there on the top of your glass. It looks fantastic. It's a beautiful mousse.
That I've also noticed, and I'm not sure, John, if you've experienced it, but I tend to say to a lot of people, when you take your first sip of MCC, because the one thing that they do is people would take a sip and immediately swallow. And I tend to find that a lot of the time, once you take that initial sip and you just swallow, the wine glances so quickly over the palate that it doesn't really open up. And if you just get to give the wine chance on the palate, you feel those bubbles sort of running off the palate and this heavy liquid just sitting underneath the palate and this beautiful mousse building up. And if you give it a couple of seconds and you then taste it, it feels like that taste profile just hangs on the palate and you get this lovely, long, lingering and more accurate kind of signal to the brain telling you what flavor profiles you're picking up.
Gosh, that's fantastic. So interesting. Yeah, is to actually keep it in your mouth, to let the wine kind of settle underneath your palate. I bet a lot of people watching don't know that tip.
I always teach it.
Give it some time. Yeah.
Denzel always teaches it. Thank you, Denzel. Oh, that's cool.
It was interesting. We had a Classic Association meeting the other day. I don't know if you were there, Denzel, that Peter gave.
I missed
it was but something that came out because Classic has its origins in 1971, which is amazing. But it's beautiful that 2021 will be the 50-year celebration for Classic.
Oh, cool.
So I think there's a lot of excitement that will build up for next year. And we take it, one mustn't take it for granted. Classic is a very special brand. You've got Champagne, you have Cava, you have Franciacorta, you've got certain appellations in the world, but none of the New World wines have named their sparklings. They just call it, well, in America, they actually call it Champagne. But they'll just call
sparkling.
Yeah, sparkling. Nothing. Whereas Classic is very special. We've got a great identity. We have a lot to celebrate. And the whole category is exciting. It's vibrant. It's growing. So lots to look forward to.
Yeah.
I must say we live in great times.
We live in weird times, but still, as long as you've got a good stash of bubbly, you can have a very long lockdown.
Look at myself.
Oh, check out all the bottles behind you, Denzel. You've got quite a supply there.
Denzel's ready for another 2 months.
Yeah. Yes, we're all jealous over here. We can't wait for wine sales to take off again. Oh man! And maybe as a closing comment, we can just maybe suggest what type of food goes best with bubbles. John, would you like to start?
Oh, look, gee. I mean, you have your classics. So an incredible old Blanc de Blanc with caviar I mean, that is, I think, one of the pinnacles of a gourmet experience. But naturally, one can't always go off and buy caviar. You have to be pretty loaded to do that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, cutler sec goes well with salty food. So it can go with cured meats that are salty, hard cheeses, seafood. So your oysters obviously are the big go-to. Oysters, crayfish, prawns, lionfish. So those are sort of some of the classics. But bubbly is, if you have a fresh young bubbly, you can do it with oysters. And then as you go through the meal, if you've got like a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old bubbly, that can go beautifully with duck, with more complex kind of richer food. So you can be very versatile, and with dessert as well. So nice acidic berry style desserts also go very well with bubbly.
Yeah, and you've mentioned all very powerful tasting foods, high in salt or in fat or in sugar, and it kind of, it balances out the bubbles. It just creates a whole lot of excitement on your palate. And I love those suggestions. Thank you, John. And Denzel, what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I'll add on to what John said, because I had some of them also listed. The one other thing that I wanted to say is a lot of the times people don't understand how versatile Cup Classic is, for the fact that you can actually have it with various meals. And I've tested this in Johannesburg, where I had a 7-course dinner with only Cup Classics, and I had Cup Classics that were just over 30 years old, right until the freshest one that I could find at the farm. And I've made a note that sorbets, if you're going to go for dessert, sorbets works beautiful with Cup Classic.
Oh wow!
So if you run out of any of those dessert wines, don't stress yourself. Grab a bottle of MCC and you will get something out of it. If you are going to go to your more fuller meals, like John said, I would move away slightly away from the fresh, crisp Cup Classics. I would move to something slightly more older, that have maybe lost a bit of that crispiness on the palate, but it have gained a lot of the maturation characters and the lovely honeycomb sweetness that comes through on the back of the palate. And that will go very well if you think smoked mussels, something that's quite practical and that's cheap enough to play around with. It will complement mussels beautiful. Duck, seared duck, or even smoked duck with an older vintage will be brilliant. And John mentioned the cheeses. You can go to town when it comes to cheese. So
would you recommend more of a creamy style cheese, or more of like a mature hard cheese?
Mature hard cheese is better. Yeah, harder, saltier kind of cheese, something like Conte or like a mature English cheddar, that kind of thing. And you mustn't forget Cup Classic or champagne. It's pretty interchangeable, but let's say Cup Classic is the only socially acceptable alcohol that you can drink 24 hours a day. So there's nothing wrong if you're at breakfast having Cup Classic.
That's so true.
And that you can have with salmon, or if you have it with eggs Benedict, absolutely delicious.
Oh wow! So eggs Benedict with salmon.
Yeah, exactly. If you walk in early in the morning and see someone drinking a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon for breakfast, then you know there's a problem. But when it's bubbly, no problem.
I love that. Kim over here is saying she's had zero access to MCC in lockdown, and they've had to celebrate birthdays without any, and that really sucks, Kim. I'm so sorry about that.
No.
So now you've got 2 great options. Okay?
I'm saying once we get to level 3, Kim, you will have to make sure that you're stocking up on.
Absolutely, yeah. Get some Simonsa, get some Silverthorn, stock up. Don't just buy one bottle, buy cases in case we go back to level 4 again and they cut us off again. I'm telling
Exactly.
you, when alcohol sales is back on, we're all going to be stockpiling just in case. It's good for sales, not for the pocket. Good for wine sales.
We need it.
And Gabby here is saying, thank you so much. She's learned so much about MCC. So that's awesome. It's a pleasure, Gabby, and thank you for tuning in.
Fantastic.
Do you have any final comments, gentlemen, before we close off and head off for dinner?
No, I think it's just wonderful. I mean, the world is in a difficult place. I mean, if we think back, Champagne has been precariously positioned right next to Germany. So both in the First and Second World War, Champagne was absolutely devastated. But through that, in those underground tunnels, they stored all the champagne. They turned those tunnels into hospitals and churches and everything. So bubbly has survived the worst things in the world, and we will get through this, and we'll still be drinking Cup Classic, lots of it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Positive thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, my departing words would definitely be we're going through so much difficult times that we forget to celebrate the finer things in life. We go through this time and we forget the fact that we're here, and that we still breathe is a good sign, and that we can get to spend so much time with our close family who's in our households or who's around us. And it's a time to once again I always say, not just reimagine the future, but it's a beautiful time to create memories, because we're in a I always say a space where we're creating new history. And if we break down history, then it's always his story. It is your story. It's a time to celebrate your story. And MCC just brings it all alive. So take the time, enjoy it with friends and family, and make sure that next time you pick up a bottle of wine, it is not just about the wine, it is about the story. And that's what makes wine so beautiful, because each of the different wines, as you've heard tonight between Simonser and Silverton, that you've had these rich stories. It's all based on stories. It's what brings us together. And that's the importance. Wine brings people together. And that is really, really special.
I agree. I've got goosebumps, Denzel. Goosebumps.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for tuning in, gentlemen. And to those that are watching, thank you so much for your comments and questions. We've enjoyed having you. And this is us saying good night. Be safe. Stay at home. And when wine sales are open again, stock up.
Thank you, Leanne. Cheers. Thanks, Denzel. Cheers.